You may have heard of the Nordic gender equality paradox. Not only is this a book, but it's a kind of long-running thesis that social scientists have had, query that social scientists have had, about the fact that the more gender egalitarian the laws, rules, and norms of the Scandinavian countries have become, the wider the gulf between men and women on a professional level has also manifested itself. And we can see this in some of the data that have been presented here. Um, from a philosophical perspective, if you ask people things like, when jobs are scarce, men should have more rights to a job than women, well, the Nordic countries just don't agree. They just no, well, not particularly, in fact. And they're very egalitarian. But when you actually look at what the people are actually doing, rather than the stated preference, the revealed preference, as you can see, the proportion of women amongst directors and chief executives in the Nordic countries is very low compared to the Western European and particularly the sort of Asian countries. And so the question that is being constantly asked is why? Why is this happening? Especially as Norway has gender quotas, which apparently are just not being fulfilled. And so if companies aren't hiring women and consciously directly hiring women to go straight to the top, and when that does happen, you, as they say here, you get a kind of degradation in the quality of governance, and women are just choosing not to do this. Why is this happening? Why is it that the gulf between male professions and female professions still persists in a country where you would think things would be moving towards a more 50-50 split? And well, this is an article the BBC published today, in fact. And I think this really speaks to the core of the issue that the social scientists really can't see because of their presuppositions about what it is to be a man and a woman. So it's titled Sweden's Soft Girl Trend That Celebrates Women Quitting Work. And this is just fascinating. We're going to read through this. So Sweden, just like Norway, has a global reputation for championing gender equality, so why are young women embracing the social media trend that celebrates quitting work? And they give the example of Vilma Larsson, who's 25. She's previously had a variety of jobs, but she quit work a year ago to become a stay-at-home girlfriend and says she's never been happier. My life is softer. I am not struggling. I am not very stressed. Well, already, you can see why this might seem like an appealing option, if indeed it is an option on the table. I could become a stay-at-home, a kept woman, as it were, become a stay-at-home mother, perhaps become a wife, etc., etc. And if that's on the table, well, surely you are going to get a lot of women who are like, yeah, you know what? I actually don't need to try and become the CEO of a company when I, in fact, could have a nice stress-free life at home. They tell us that her boyfriend works remotely in finance, and so he spends his days working at home. So she is also with him, and she can go to the gym or go out, whatever. And they can travel a lot because his job's remote. So they just live a nice, comfortable, bourgeois life without her worrying about becoming a girl boss. She says every month he gives me a salary from his money that he made. But if I need more, I'll ask him. Or if I need less, I don't. I just save the rest. This is very much the same situation that me and my wife have, except she very rarely needs less. I'm just teasing there. It's fine. It's inflation, you see. The price of everything's gone up. But she posts about this on Instagram, and she uses various hashtags for sort of Swedish stay-at-home girlfriend and housewife, and describes herself as a soft girl, an identity that embraces a softer, more feminine way of living rather than focusing on a career. And this is something that I think that this speaks to one of the real failures of feminism, which is in the very way that it conceptualizes what success is for women, right? Because they seem to treat women as defective men, to say, right, women are falling behind men when it comes to competition for jobs or academic achievement or athletic achievement or whatever it is. In any category where men tend to dominate the top spots, it is viewed much just through the lens of a gender war, a competition between the sexes, and women are looked at by the feminists as failing that. Now, that's actually, I think, a deeply unhealthy perspective to have on male and female relationships. And I actually am very, very sympathetic to this perspective, which is, Well, why not? Why don't we encourage flourishing and happiness rather than arbitrarily declaring women to be the same as men, and therefore, if they're not out competing men, they are in some way failing? Because I don't agree that that is what a failure is for the life of the average woman. I mean, I don't even think that's the failure for the life of the average man. I'm not a Fortune 500 CEO, and I have no desire to be, because I can't even imagine how stressful that life must be. My life is stressful enough as it is. Why would I want that in addition to it? And that is me taking the approach of, well, my happiness is more important than some arbitrary ideological goal that you have a priori set before you've come and looked at the circumstances of my own life. Why would I want that? And so they carry on. The soft girl lifestyle has been a micro trend on social media in different parts of the world since the late 2010s. But in Sweden, with 5 decades of policies designed to promote dual income households behind it, the concept's recent popularity has sparked both surprise and division. Again, why was it that our civilizations suddenly, 50 years ago, took a strange turn to the left and were like, yeah, you know what, we need women working too? Like, did women agree to this? Is this something that women wanted? It's like, yeah, by the way, 7 o'clock Monday morning, you need to be getting up, getting showered, getting ready for work, and then spend an hour driving to your office and then doing the daily grind, only to then come home and try and live the life that you wanted to live. Did women sign up for that, or was that imposed upon them? Anyway, so they've done various studies and surveys and found that 14% of 7 to 14-year-olds actively identify as soft girls, as in women who don't want to be hard-nosed career people, which, I mean, I'm shocked that it's that low, to be honest. why wouldn't you want a much nicer life than this? They say it's about leaning away from this girl boss ideal that we've seen for a lot of years, where there are very, very high demands for success in every aspect of life, explains one researcher. Now, again, I just find this very interesting, and we have to go back and revisit the prior assumptions that we've made. Do women want to be girl bosses? Well, a significant portion of them don't want to be, and I think that that's just the ones who ideologically understand themselves to be outside of that paradigm. I don't think many women actually want this, and why were women being looked at in the first place as defective men? That is, in men who are failing to compete and therefore will shove them in and make them work all hours of the day to try and outcompete people who may be, say, more naturally competitive than the average woman and things like this. So anyway, they say it's become a major talking point in Sweden, from opinion pieces and broadsheets to panel discussions. And the co-founder and former leader of Sweden's feminist party, Gudrun Schyman, says she's taken part in recent debates on the issue, and she believes that women living off their partner's wealth is very dangerous and a step backwards for gender equality. Okay, yes, I agree. It is very dangerous and a step backward for gender equality if women essentially just become housewives, right? Yes, I agree. That is not going to advance the cause of feminism. That's not going to advance the cause of gender equality. What that's going to advance is the happiness of these women. Women will find it less stressful and more relaxing and more just comfortable in their own lives to not try and compete with men to become Fortune 500 CEOs. I agree that will do damage to gender equality. That's a problem for you. That's a problem for someone who's not worried about their own personal happiness and who is ideologically committed to trying to get women into the rat race. But it's not bad for these women, which is why they're choosing it. It's good for them, and they're actually happy to be doing it. And actually their lives become easier and more entertaining and more fun and more comfortable and more relaxing. And they get what they actually want out of life, rather than becoming the CEO. Anyway, Ms. Schyman argues that young Swedes have been influenced by the country's right-wing coalition government, which collaborates with nationalist Sweden Democrat Party as part of a broad coalition of populism. Okay, maybe, but look at what's happening. You have put the locus of importance of women's lives on an abstract ideal that they haven't necessarily signed up to, that is making them maybe miserable, that is not actually what they want out of life. To what goal? Well, even let's assume that Swedish women are like, you know what, I'm just going to have to slug it out. I'm just going to have to really just grind to make sure the feminists can look at a statistics block and go, well, at least those numbers are the same. So is that worth the time of your life to pour it away into corporate offices under fluorescent lighting just to say, yeah, we got that 50-50%? It's like, why? That only makes sense if you're an ideologue, if you're someone who doesn't care about the happiness of these people and actually just wants to say, no, I have remade the world in a perfect way that I had rationalistically outlined prior to any engagement with any of the people that I'm dealing with, and no matter what the consequence on their life is. Like, you may be working these women into an early grave, just like the men who die younger than women. Or it could be that these women could just be like, yeah, no, I don't really care about gender equality, I care about being happy. Anyway, she says she also thinks there's a lack of awareness about life in Sweden before it embraced policies designed to promote gender equality, such as heavily subsidised childcare and shared parental leave. Young women today don't carry the history of how women had to fight for their rights. The right to work, the right to have a salary, and the right to economic independence. It's like, okay, right. So, because a portion of women in like the 60s and 70s were like, yes, I want to be able to work, which fair enough, that means that now all women have to work and achieve that 50-50 balance on your spreadsheet, or else what? They're not going to lose their rights to get a job. They're not going to lose their rights to do these things. They're just saying, well, look, I'm glad that you did that then, but I don't want to do that now. And you know what? They don't actually have to. Men actually do still like being the providers in relationships. And these women are obviously like, yeah, no, I like that too, because I'd rather spend my time with someone who loves me than being just another interchangeable, fungible corporate drone, which again is just crazy. Obviously, the Sweden Democrats, the far-right party, you can tell because they're pro-democracy, they're populists, say, well, look, I think that people should get to decide their own lives, says one of their spokespeople. And if you have that economic possibility to live with a partner, then good for you. Yeah, why not? Good for you. There's nothing wrong with it. There's absolutely nothing wrong with it whatsoever. And so this, I think, is the main issue that they have, is that, well, if you want to make a state of affairs that is essentially unnatural, and you have to ideologically craft this way of living, well, what do you do with women and people who just don't want to be a part of it, for whom it just is not what they're looking for out of life? Well, essentially, you have to tell them that they're backsliders, that they're kind of like gender traitors. You know, you're damaging gender equality. It's like, but that's an awful burden to put on like anyone, but especially like young people who are just discovering their place in the world, and they're like, yeah, I just would like to just live the life I want to live. It's like, no, sorry. There was a long ago, a bunch of feminist ideologues came up with a plan to transform this country, and you're not living up to that. It's like, well, so what? What do they owe her? Oh, you're both women. So? This accident of birth, as normally you're quite happy to try and undermine any plan using, is not something that means women are feminists because they're women. In fact, many women aren't feminists and don't want this. In fact, feminists have usually been a very small minority of women and do not actually speak for women, but they speak against men, which is how the men have essentially gone, well, okay, if in the guise of women, if the women are upset with the way we're running the world, we'll change it because we just want our wives and girlfriends to be happy. But anyway, they carry on complaining about this. But I think this is a fairly good place to end it, right? So you've got an economist that's one of Sweden's largest pension funds says she does not believe that enough Swedish girlfriends or wives will quit work for it to have an impact on the country's economy. Well, you never know. But she says the current soft girl debates should serve as a wake-up call to both politicians and businesses alike. There is still work to be done to address ongoing structural inequalities in Sweden. Right. So the perspective of this economist and just the entire state apparatus really is predominantly feminist, and it's like, right, okay, we just need the women to work, otherwise economic consequences happen in the future. It's like, well, sure, the GDP might not continue going up, but these people will still work, their husbands will work, these people will still be consumers in the economy, they just won't be constantly on the treadmill in the rat race. They will have a work-life balance they are happy with. And this is clearly an issue. I think the source of it, which is mental health issues, burnouts, and all that, is what's more worrying, because that affects not only the few younger girls that today that want to stay at home as soft girls. It's like, yeah, but the point is, you're viewing these women as merely economic units and as merely political agents for your quote unquote concern about structural inequalities. They are people. They are unique individual people with lives of their own and goals of their own and desires that go off grid when it comes to this ideological package. They're not looking to fulfill your criteria. They're looking to lead good lives. More power to them.